Welcome to the call on answers to your most important questions on EFT training and certification. This is Phillip Mountrose with my wonderful wife and partner, Jane.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here.
Great to be here on the Zoom conference webinar. You can mute yourself by pressing 6, by the way. There's a mute on your screen, too. We can do that as well. So we have quite a few questions that have come in and that we will be addressing that we have been submitted recently and over the years. And this training is for anyone who is interested in a better quality of life, really, and that especially includes coaches, healers, healthcare workers, practitioners, and so anyone who might want to go further, and teachers, consultants, many people, business people are very interested in coaching and healing for having a better quality life. And our mission here today at Awakenings Institute, our nonprofit organization, is to work with holistic EFT. We have a specific brand, a very effective brand of EFT, and other powerful healing techniques. And we've learned these over our lifetime, Jane and I, for many years in the field now, a few decades plus. And both of us have been quite interested in personal and spiritual development, which really led us directly into healing. And we really wanted to understand ourselves better, people better, what really makes people tick. And this information that we're sharing with you is actually relatively difficult to find. So this will be a nice place that we gather it in. To find deep, pinpointed training is even actually rare. That's very effective and proven. So today we're going to be focusing on questions on holistic EFT training and certification, what it is, what it's not, unique aspects of our particular holistic approach too. Jane, did you want to add anything before we go to question number 1?
No, I'm ready to go.
Right, here's question number 1. Who trained you? That is, where did you get your certification? Something that people sometimes ask us.
Right, and it's really a long story because, as Phillip mentioned, we've both been interested in spiritual and personal development from an early age. We met each other in the 1970s when we were in a spiritual organization focused on understanding human nature better and living in the present moment. And it was a wonderful experience for us. At that time, we were in our late 20s, Phillip starting out as a teacher, and I was starting out as an architect. And we learned a lot in those early years about what makes people tick, why people do the things they do and behave the way they do. And in fact, we've created an entire course on life purpose based on, in part, on what we learned during those early years. And we still find what we learned there very profound, but it was incomplete, which was interesting because we were interested in spiritual development and really accelerated development. How can people become more fully human and do it as quickly and easily as possible? That's always been a focus. And we also wanted to connect more with we wanted to empower ourselves. We wanted to connect more with our own truth and guidance, which wasn't happening where we were. So we went off in a different direction, and really, like probably many people on the call and people who are listening to this, we wanted to find our own way. And so if you fast forward then to the late 1980s, we were still searching, and at that point, actually, we were approaching our 40s and really looking at what we wanted for our lives and realizing being a teacher for Phillip and being an architect for me wasn't actually it, which was interesting. It kind of happened to both of us. As you could say, it was kind of maybe midlife crisis or just a soul awakening kind of an experience where we had to take, in a more, I guess, a deeper way, take charge of our lives. And so Phillip was looking at maybe going to school and studying psychology. And I bring this up because a lot of people who are looking at becoming holistic practitioners or somehow, in some way working with EFT, they're thinking, well, do I need to go into psychology? Would it be better to get a degree in psychology? So Phillip already had a college degree, but he realized that when he actually looked at it, a lot of the content wasn't what he really was feeling called to do. It was he wanted more kind of state-of-the-art approaches to healing and development, and it would be really a deviation and cost a lot of money and take a lot of time. So he decided to take an alternative path, and I kind of followed along just because I was obviously interested in it, not thinking it would ever become anything. But when you look at that distinction between becoming a psychologist or somehow a licensed therapist, family therapist, there are a lot of different certifications in those kinds of fields, or licensing, I should say, licensing opportunities. Those people practice with a license. The value of certification comes in to fill spaces where licensing is not offered or required by law. So we decided to take that path and first studied for several years with some powerful spiritual healers. It wasn't a certification program, but we learned some really powerful techniques that we haven't seen anywhere else since then, and now we incorporate in our work that completely changed our lives, and we found to be very transformational for other people as well. So, this is it's a long story, and we finally found the keys we were looking for for accessing one's own inner guidance and wisdom. And our goal in working with people is to help anyone who's interested to empower themselves. We're not looking to be gurus or, to convince anybody of anything. We want people to connect more with what they want for themselves, and also to, through the experience of the techniques, to recognize their value. Because it's kind of like without any validation, kind of societal type validation of alternative techniques, really the proof is in the pudding, as they say. The proof is in the results. And we learned some things that get powerful results. So during that time, I became more and more interested in healing myself. And so together we started taking certification courses and considering maybe more professional development in healing. And so we took a one-year course in hypnotherapy, realizing that a lot of what people were missing was in these deep recesses of our minds. We took NLP, Reiki, hands-on healing, became Reiki master teachers, and found that to be a great way to confirm the validity of energy, how energy actually works, and how you can actually feel energy, just like you can feel the top of a tabletop with your hands. And so that was, for me, that was very interesting and compelling and validating of what we were doing. We also studied body talk and learned a variety of other skills over the years since the early 1990s. We had a full year of training in intuitive development. We studied matrix energetics, which is another transformational healing system. Again, we had a sustained focus on accelerated spiritual development. So as we were learning, we actually started teaching and developing our own techniques and using things in creative ways. And then we had extensive training in life coaching, which we now also teach. So when we found EFT in 1998, we had a lot of experience already, but EFT really supercharged our results. So we knew how to access with pinpoint precision, how to access where the blocks were. And EFT really supercharged our ability to help people to clear things quickly and easily so that they could move forward in a positive way. And that was really helpful for us in our work. And so with that, we completed Gary Craig's beginning and advanced EFT courses in the late 1990s. And since we were teaching certification courses at that point, also we were teaching courses in holistic hypnotherapy, Reiki and kinesiology and other things also. With our classes, we had been writing manuals. And when we discovered EFT, there weren't any real books on it. So we wrote one of the first books on EFT in direct connection with Gary Craig, who wrote the foreword for that book. So we have a pretty extensive background and training, and even since then, since the late 90s, we've continued to evolve and grow and still find that there are deeper layers to what's actually occurring and how we can help people and help ourselves to open up more and to live our lives more fully. And that's one of the things, if you're considering certification, becoming a practitioner or taking your next steps, to me, one of the really exciting things about all of this is that there is no end to your potential. It just gets better and better and deeper, and the kinds of things you understand, you think, well, wow, we still have that happen, which it amazes me when it happens. It's like, wow, I didn't know that. And there's so much that might be right in front of us, but we just reach deeper all the time. So, I think it's just, if anybody wants to go into that kind of work, I highly recommend it because it's so completely fulfilling. Mm-hmm. We've never had a boring day doing this, I don't think, in all these years, and we became very bored with our work before. So,
yes.
And so that brings us to the next question, which is, I never received formal training in counseling or psychology. Would it not be preposterous to start work as a healer without such formal training? And I think we partly answered that, but Philip probably has more. You can probably add to it.
Let me go into a little more on that. Well, as we mentioned, some certifications, a certification is different from licensing. Now, licensing is more of a legal matter, where government bodies, state bodies that are licensed, that are formally structured, you have to follow a certain format to be officially licensed, and there's a legal part to it too.
In the United States, we're talking about.
We can't really comment outside the United States. We don't know all the structures everywhere, and so therefore, like a licensed therapist, for example, is different than someone who is certified. Certification means you have an organization and you meet their standards, and that organization certifies you. You've been approved, you've been officially sanctioned and endorsed by them, and you're connected with them in a supportive way. And Jane mentioned years ago, I considered sort of that split, like, should I become a licensed psychologist? And looking into it, it really didn't make sense because my heart wasn't in it. I could see it was a huge amount of time and investment. Years before that, I was thinking about becoming a college professor after undergraduate school. And I kind of looked down that road, and people were in that, and there are some things I admired and thought was good, but deep down in my heart, it really wasn't what I was looking for. And as a side note, many therapists, especially alternative progressive therapists, licensed people, study EFT and in fact take our home study course. And our home study course was the certification course we offered from Awakenings, was the first one ever offered in 2004. Well, there is a marriage of the two as well. But for myself, I felt the alternative way was the way to go. And interestingly enough, the person who taught Gary Craig, who originated EFT, Roger Callahan, who was a therapist, a licensed therapist, he discovered TFT, thought field therapy, which was the predecessor of EFT, when Gary Craig studied with Roger Callahan. And Dr. Callahan realized he had to go outside the box. He had to look for further ways to help people, which led him to an alternative energy healing, one of the first energy healings, modern energy healing, although if you go back to ancient cultures and acupuncture and so forth, which EFT draws on, it's very ancient. And also John Diamond, who Roger Callahan studied, with an Australian psychiatrist. He went outside the system too, the medical system, and developed behavioral kinesiology with muscle testing, and sometimes EFT incorporates muscle testing to develop a whole wonderful system too. And then we mentioned Richard Bartlett in matrix energetics. So a lot of the biggest innovators, the people who make the biggest discoveries, either are outside the system or working outside the system. It seems to open up things that are not conventional. In fact, if it's in the mainstream, that means it's what's normally done. And that may be useful at times, but it's often can be very limiting and kind of have a lot of blind spots and restrictions. And that's thus the birth of wonderful energy medicine, energy psychology like EFT. And then we became recognized as innovators in the field by going outside the system and using what we call our getting through techniques. So you have to decide for yourself which route is for you. Is it something where you want more formal training or not? But just kind of figure if you are going to do the EFT training or whatever as a practitioner, a holistic practitioner, or an add-on to your current interest or your current field, wherever you're going or starting or developing, you want to look at it pretty seriously, just like a person who would want to get licensed. You'd want to study and train and discipline yourself and go into it and learn the matter and really master a lot of things, which takes some time and energy, and it's well worth it. Jane, anything else before the next question?
Oh, no, that seems to cover it pretty well.
So question 3 is why get certified?
Right. Yeah, and as we were mentioning, certification provides verification for training in areas that aren't covered by licensing, essentially. And the value of certification for those who want to practice alternative methods is that, well, the first thing, it is validation. So you get a certificate that you can hang on your wall if you have an office, or just that you can use that, just say that you are certified in an area. It also opens you, like Philip was saying, to having disciplined study. And I think there's a great value in that, just saying to yourself, well, if I want to be certified, I'm going to have to do these certain things. And since it isn't a licensed area, it really is up to each person to explore and learn what you need to learn so that you become effective. Because nobody can. It's not like you go through med school and then you go work in a hospital and become a doctor. You're on your own, kind of. So you have the discipline study, and one of the real keys is practice, practice, practice with the things that you learn. Just keep doing them and doing more and kind of broadening out in what you're doing, because it's through practice that you really develop the confidence that you need and the clarity and validation that what you're doing is working, so that you can work with other people successfully. And then, of course, you receive guidance from people who've mastered skills and succeeded professionally themselves, so that you have a mentor too. And as Philip mentioned, some of our students are also licensed professionals. We have psychologists, doctors, nurses, different people who want to add complementary approaches to their work. Because right now, in the United States at least, people are spending as much on complementary techniques as they are on kind of the more validated techniques. And so the interest in the kinds of things that we're doing is growing. And with all of that, just with our certification, we were already certified in a lot of modalities and had 8 years of experience in EFT when we offered our first certification courses. So I think it's really important to look at who you go to for training too. And from our perspective, just as an overview, we call our approach holistic EFT, and we use a holistic approach because we've found over many, many years, obviously, of exploration that a holistic approach is the most objective. Because the body, emotions, mind, and spirit, everything is connected. And if you can understand how that all works, it's amazing what you can do. And it's very exciting. And And it's extremely efficient, much more efficient than what we've seen in a lot of other approaches. And that's what we teach. So we've seen a lot of EFT professionals. We receive questions like, how does your approach compare with other people? And we can't compare with everybody, but we've seen a lot of professionals who use kind of a hunt and peck method with EFT and to identify what's happening, because that's like really pinpointing what's happening is what makes you effective. And so it's a lot of time they spent just kind of going here and there and looking like, is it under the table? You know, is it over here on the shelf? Or and it's not very efficient, or I would say organic. Another thing I like about a holistic approach is that it's very organic. And when you know how to pinpoint precisely what's happening, you can speed things up considerably, and you can go deeper, and the insights that come are just amazing. And you save wear and tear on the client, you know, with not having to do the hunt and peck method. And of course, you can increase your success, I think, exponentially if you really, because you start to recognize specific things, and then you know exactly where to go with them. So in addition to basic EFT, we've added elements of the most effective approaches that we've learned over all these decades into our work. With Phillip mentioned GTT, we call it the getting through techniques that we added to EFT that are just our own way of doing things. And another thing about, for people who wonder about our program, is our courses are always evolving as we evolve, and we keep adding our most current understandings to our teaching so that people get the most effective things as we learn them, and just it keeps getting better and better. So now with EFT, we have 3 levels of training, along with a lot of other things that we teach that can be added for people who want to go, you know, broaden out their experience.
Right.
And so that's, I guess, our next question, right? So how can
question number 4?
Right. Can I combine EFT with other approaches? Which obviously we do.
Yes, and as you might imagine, yes. In fact, that's one of the beauties of EFT. It's not something where you have to do this exclusive technique and you can't do it with anything else. It works really well with all kinds of modalities, and that's why a lot of other healers and therapists use it and add it on as another effective, proven tool. And again, we use a particularly holistic approach, which we think is extremely effective. We also, as we mentioned, Jane mentioned, we have other techniques, energy healings, one we developed called spiritual kinesiology, a healing from the soul, some life purpose approaches, very hands-on. And we have a premier holistic coaching and healing program, a year program by a telecourse or a Zoom conference like this, and more. So there's different ways to go further. And we've helped now many thousands of people in this approach, this special blend of effective tools that we found work, and people keep reporting to us they work and have a lot of breakthroughs as well. And so it's really wonderful to hear people how the successes they've had, and we get a lot of wonderful testimony and so forth about that, and it's very gratifying. And that's something you can experience too if you want to go further with it, if you're at that point too. And part of it is you start to realize your mess is your message. You may have heard that, your mess is your message. So what you've learned in your life, the messy part of your life, everyone's a certain amount of mess in it, can be used, can be channeled, can be structured to help people, because you're going to help people with their conflicts and problems, right? So yours and your resolutions of what you've learned can be transferred into that and make you more effective with people, because you're all unique. Everyone's unique. Everyone has a part to play. And as Jane and I said when we first found EFT, although we had already learned a lot of things, this we realized would supercharge our abilities and to help others, and it really did. Let's see. Jane mentioned about practicing. That's really what is the big difference to dramatically improve. Just you have to practice, not in a something you probably want to do, But the more you do it, the better you will become. There is now a lot of research over the years of something which is called deliberate practice. And K. Eric Anderson, famous researcher, discovered that the people who are the best performers, they have something in common in certain fields that have been studied, fields like music and athletics and memory and memory training and chess. Those people have practiced not only the number of hours, but the way they did it. If you do it with an intentional way, a way to improve, specific ways to improve, and getting feedback, coaching and mentoring can be part of it. That's what distinguishes the top performers in certain fields. Now, some fields are a little more artistic, intuitive, so it's a little harder to measure that component of it. But if you are intentionally practicing EFT and learning and how to become better each time you practice, you will become a much more effective EFT practitioner and healer and coach. Jane, anything else do we want to add on that?
Just on that topic of combining with other approaches and just each person's approach, Philip mentioned that each of us is unique. You know, we have this combination of all of our life experiences and the things that we're learning in the field, in the alternative healing field. And we have, it's like, to me, if you look at it kind of in terms of the synchronous flow of things, each of us has people, you know, who are here for us. And even between Philip and me, I think I learned it very clearly because we use the same techniques with the same ideas, but practicing together early on, I realized Philip will take something in one direction, I would take it in another direction, and both of them work, but they're different because each of us is different. And I think part of it when you're learning is honoring what feels right to you. Like where does it feel right to you to go with something with a person? And I think that's part of, Philip mentioned more artistic things. I think it is an art. You know, we're talking about the healing arts. And there's a certain flow with it that is really just miraculous when you get into it. And that's where practice, obviously, is so helpful. Because you get into a flow with it, and it just is happening. It's just the most amazing thing.
Right. So the next question is number 5. If I take this course, EFT training course, certification course, do I have the right to use EFT on others?
Yes, and of course that's the idea. So yes, and of course there are limitations because you have to be aware of local regulations. And in the United States, we're not actually aware of any laws that specifically prohibit people from practicing EFT. But we always advise our students that they have to be responsible for understanding local regulations. And it's something that probably anyone who works as a professional in any area needs to know to stay safe and avoid problems. You know, it brings up a related question: who can you use EFT with, and are there any restrictions? I mean, these are related ideas, and that brings me to kind of how we look at it as an essence of it. That we work with normal people with normal problems. And we don't try to substitute any of our techniques for the professional service of a psychologist who works with people who may be deeply troubled. And also, we can't claim that we're a substitute for a doctor. So I think you have to be very aware of that. And if you work with people with problems requiring professional medical attention, we always recommend either having the doctor's permission before using these techniques where it seems advisable, or requiring the clients to sign a waiver form so they are real clear about what you do and what you don't do. So the waiver form, it's really just an information form just saying what I just said. We're not doctors, you know, we're not psychologists, we work in this certain way. And we do provide a sample of the form that we use in our EFT Level 1 course. So again, be aware of what's happening in your local area. I always say ask people who are working in your area. That's a good place to start. And also, we're affiliated with a professional organization, the IHF, which is the International Hypnosis Federation. They work with all kinds of holistic practitioners. And we go there for advice on this and other areas related to professional conduct. And that's the value of professional organizations like that. They help people with these kinds of things. And of course, our students qualify to join too.
We can link you to that organization, right?
Right. And there's another point that I wanted to mention. We want our students to know that Gary Craig, the man who created EFT, and many other healing professionals, including ourselves, practice as ministers. And in the United States, it provides protection, and there are other benefits, actually, that go beyond, the purpose of this class. But I think it's been a real blessing for us being ministers. And if you look at the most common problem alternative practitioners face, it is being accused of practicing medicine without a license. And you also have to watch for being accused of practicing psychology without a license. So they're kind of like these dividing lines that you need to be aware of. And if you become a holistic minister like us, in the United States, you're free to practice healing the way it's stated in the laws. You're free to practice healing in accordance with your religious beliefs, which essentially can be, I wouldn't say anything, but almost anything, excluding obvious things like you can't do surgery on people. You can't cut them open with a knife or do those kinds of things with people that are obviously beyond even a minister's area of work. But essentially, and people sometimes think, well, gee, I'm not that religious. But if you think a religion is simply a set of beliefs, for us as holistic practitioners, we're spiritual people. We believe that we're being guided by God, by our Creator. We're working really on a spiritual level. And so to us, it works really perfectly. And in California, we would imagine in other states, you're also prohibited from touching people unless you have some kind of a license that allows you to do that. Like if you're a massage therapist or a nurse or a doctor, something like that legalizes touching. But if you're a minister, that doesn't apply to you either. I mean, I guess you could say being a minister authorizes you to touch people for healing, obviously in a professional way. So with that in mind, in 1996, we affiliated our school, Awakenings Institute, with a nonprofit religious organization and became ministers for ourselves, for protection and for support. And really found, it was interesting for me because for the first time, I think, ever, I started to feel like I had found the place that fits for me. And it was partly being associated with an organization that is supportive. So it was much more than just protection for me. And in 2004, then we incorporated Awakenings Institute and received nonprofit status from the U.S. government, which gave us the ability also to ordain ministers ourselves who are using techniques like the ones that we teach. And we're not limiting people who we ordain to that, but that's another thing that we do.
Yeah, it's non-denominational.
Right. It's holistic, really holistically oriented, or in terms of religion, we would say that it's a non-denominational or multi-denominational, that we're not in any way restricting anyone's religious beliefs either. It's a very actually creative kind of spiritual organization. And which brings us to the next question specifically about Awakenings Institute. So why would a person want to be certified by Awakenings Institute rather than another choice you might find online?
Right. It depends partly what you're looking for, too. I mean, because some people are looking for a more holistic approach. Those are the people who usually find us. It's often just one thing to realize about certification is anyone can say, I can certify you, because it's not a legal matter. Now, that is good in one sense because it gives people freedom to do wonderful things, and otherwise you get into a very small, limited, regulated area, which is in licensing, which actually can really stifle things. But the other side of it is people can certify you with very little training themselves and just say, hey, I'm going to just certify you. So that would limit the value of the certification given the source of it. So you want to check out a source that's been around, that's solid, that's stable, that has some depth and reliability to it. We've worked many times with people who say they've had EFT and it hasn't worked for their issue. And there are limits. It's not EFT, it's not a cure-all, a panacea for everything, especially physical conditions. But the better you get, the more people you can help and the deeper you can go, in effect, so that you can be more effective. So you can times have some remarkable effects. I remember one person who even sometimes just following the holistic techniques in one of our Getting Through to Your Emotions, our EFT book, had a knee injury that had bothered him for many years, chronic knee injury, and he just followed the techniques which we teach in our EFT Level 1 course. He followed them and healed his knee, and he bought many books and gave it to people. He just was amazing. Jane, do you want to add anything else about why certification with the Awakenings nonprofit organization, our particular certification?
Well, I think that we're accessible. I think we're pretty straightforward people. And as Philip mentioned, the real value in the people you train with is in being able to ask those tough questions. Right. Of course, if you're taking an independent study course, we do offer mentoring, which I think Philip is going to describe later, that we can probably save people months or years by answering some of those tough questions for them. Right. And a person, if you go to someone to be certified and they have 1 year of experience and one EFT course, they're not going to have the depth that we have. So I would just say, we always say, follow your heart. Mm-hmm. That's what we discovered, the simple truth. It took us years to find it. The truth is in your heart. Right. What really feels right to you in terms of the way that you're going.
I want to just make a particular note here that the EFT home study course, there's 3 levels actually, each one is a certification, is a home study course, so you do it at your own rate, at your own pace, and that's very practical. Some people may want to go to in-person training, which has its advantages, but we think it actually has a lot of limitations because not only it's also a lot more expensive and you have to travel, but you can't go at your own rate. Things are not recorded, so everything is kind of jammed into one weekend, and you try to get everything then. So we actually find it, and we've done it both ways, we find it much more effective to have this home study where you're teaching a little bit, you're going at your own pace and learning a little bit over the weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely.
So the next question 7, are people experiencing changes with this EFT certification course, Awakenings course? What have others said about the EFT Awakenings training?
Well, as you've probably heard, we'd have to say that all approaches to EFT are not equal. Some people are using hunt and peck. I think some people really, complicate it. This is just my own opinion, and there are many different ways of doing these things, but we've been focused for more than 20 years now on the fastest, easiest, and the most effective ways to make positive changes. And we've had tremendous success with our clients and students, thousands of people. And we've done presentations all over the United States. We focus on the bigger picture also. So people who go further with us, it's not like our EFT Level 1 course goes into it that much, but if you work with us more, we focus on the truth of who we are. All of us magnificent spiritual beings, we suggest a little like each of us is unique. Each of us has a unique reason for being alive. And I think so there's a lot that we offer to people just to really understand more about life. And of course, just going back to our EFT courses, our clients often report that we've completely changed their lives, in working with us in our courses, and students. Students often tell us that they received more than they expected, and that our unique getting through techniques with EFT are pretty remarkable. We have a lot of testimonials on our website that you can read. I can read one or two. Here's one. I was introduced to EFT tapping at the telesummits, which was a good basic introduction, but I wanted to go further. I'm so glad I took Awakening's Holistic EFT certification course, since it took me so much deeper. I now feel well-rounded, competent, and confident. I really know how to use EFT to work with the subconscious at a deeper level and clear what is really needed. Here's another one. Going into this EFT training course, I wondered if many people in my area would be open to EFT and how I could work with them. After taking this course, I felt empowered by all I had learned to help myself and clients. It gave me a lot of confidence knowing I can present myself in a professional manner. I now recommend people regularly to this holistic EFT training course. And there are many more. We have several more on our website. And I think, Philip, you work with people, the ones who complete their certification. We have
Right.
we have an interview that we do with people at the end, and it's to go over the results of the final kind of exams and things, and all of the things that they've submitted to us for certification, and also answer questions and just find out how they felt about the course, and if they have any suggestions or what they have to say about it. And what do people say that you found?
Generally, people are really surprised at how much they learned and grew. I mean, it generally exceeds their expectations because they learn a lot about themselves on a lot of deeper level, because much of what is slowing us down in life is unconscious. It's hidden. And the holistic EFT processes that you learn in the EFT training here will uncover those often. And they're surprising because you don't know they're there. It's like,
Yeah.
I keep having this fear, this doubt, this anxiety. Now I get it. And of course, you can do the same with the people you help, and you log hours. It's a very simple way to complete the course. It's some studying and some taking open book tests, and write a couple short essays about what the course meant to you, and then we talk to you. It's very valuable to have a final consultation as well. Anything else there, Jane?
No, I guess that brings us to the next question, question number 8, which is, I've taken EFT training from Gary Craig and others. Would it make sense to take this training?
Many people who have studied with others, such as Gary Craig, do take our training because they want to go further. And as we said, ours is a rather unique training, a holistic training. It's pretty straightforward and easy to follow, too. People often tell us that. And it has a lot of depth to it as well, and you go at your own pace. So you have to find out kind of what is the right approach for you. Our level 1 EFT course starts with the basics, but then all the getting through techniques, the techniques we developed on here, are added and really complement and help you pinpoint and go deeper much quicker to get quicker results. So you're going to get a wealth of effective tools and techniques that you can use really immediately in the course and then for the rest of your life. So if you're fascinated like we are by holistic healing and spiritual development, well, this might be a good program for you, a good course for you to take. And of course, it's kind of a journey in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And we found a holistic approach really more objective, because by connecting the body, emotions, thoughts, and with the spirit, with all of those combined, that holistic approach, you can go much deeper, make more connections. And we wrote our first EFT book in the 1990s. We incorporated some of these techniques, and we keep developing them, and the newest ones are added onto the resource section too. With the use of the internet, we can just update it regularly whenever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've added some really powerful techniques in recent years too that we've developed.
And sometimes people say, I tried something and it doesn't work, and then they used some of the holistic techniques you would learn in our course, the EFT course, and they do. One of them is the holistic process. Remember, I helped one lady, she didn't know why her wrist hurt. Sometimes this EFT can help for physical things, not always. But her wrist hurt, that's the physical level. The emotional level behind it was an anxiety. And on the mental thought level, she was afraid about going back into the workplace. And she felt spiritually less than, that there was something wrong with her. So we did, that was a quick tracking of herself holistically mapped out. And this is a technique that step by step you would learn, and people have remarkable results like this. And afterwards, she was fine. Her wrist was even fine. She felt confident about going back into the workplace and so forth. So those are the kind of things we see pretty regularly. It works, and it can work really well. Not all the time, but usually very effectively. And it's a very powerful and practical approach. One little note, some people use what are called tapping scripts. They're very common. And that might be useful maybe in a teaching situation. In other words, the EFT affirmation, if I were doing it, I would tell you what to say. We find that tends to be disempowering and confusing. We tend to avoid that very commonly done thing, because you're not letting the person discover what needs to be done, what needs to be shifted. And you can actually disorient the person, because if I'm saying, you have this, say this affirmation, even though you have this fear that life isn't worth living or something, and the person's saying, I'm not really thinking that, and then you're tapping. Just going down a rabbit hole here. So Gary Craig himself said scripts, EFTs, tapping scripts, tend to provide only partial results. They rarely get to the roots of the issues, and thus the true causes of the problem remain active underground. So we have a lot of other techniques that we do that are more hands-on, precise, not throwing a lot of affirmations against the wall, so to speak, to see if one of them sticks. And imagery, by the way, we use a lot of imagery that is very effective, very soulful, and targeted too. And you'll learn about that in the getting through techniques with EFT that we offer.
Yeah, I think imagery is endlessly fascinating, and our people just love working with imagery. We have a process called the reality shift, where we use imagery with EFT, and it's just quite remarkable. It almost always is really profound and always different.
Right.
It's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So question number 9, we're getting toward the last rounds here. Do you believe it is therapeutic to tap in good feelings, beliefs, to replace the detrimental ones that were just released in the tapping session? So afterwards, if the person's neutral, should you put in some positive stuff?
I would say yes, for sure. I call it sometimes the frosting on the cake, that there are things that you can do as the blockage is released, that actually then you can really amp up the positive energy and you could say the impetus that's created to go in a different direction as a result of the change that's happened. I would say I wouldn't replace tapping in good feelings for releasing, because you need to release first. And the person who wrote the question acknowledged that, which is really smart. So you want to first release, and then it's kind of like the best part of EFT, which a lot of people ignore. And that's the transformation in awareness that emerges as you could say the energy reconfigures, or you could say the dust settles. And because when the block is gone, a person's, it's like your presence becomes much more powerful. You just find yourself, you ask people how they feel and say, oh, I feel really peaceful. It's like they're just able to be themselves in the moment, and their inner guidance and wisdom emerges. So the resourcefulness to resolve the problem, whatever it was, in a new way, all of a sudden reveals itself. And if you talk about what is emerging, it can be very revealing and help to determine what a person's next steps are, which is really the important part. Is, okay, so how then does this change affect my life going forward? Like, what's going to be different for me now? And so we encourage our clients to share what's different and what they might do differently now. And as you're suggesting in the question, you can ask them what they're feeling now, which may be something like, I feel really peaceful, or gosh, I'm so excited now. Like somebody who felt blocked about taking their next step, maybe as a holistic practitioner, which we often encounter with, because we work a lot with holistic professionals. Like, I'm so excited now about getting out and doing these things that I couldn't imagine myself doing 10 minutes ago. And so what you can do in that case is quantify the excitement. Like it might be a 10 already, but maybe say, well, I feel really excited. How excited? Well, it's a 4. And then you can do a round or 2 on that and really amp it up. And that's very exciting. We also use something we call future pacing. It's actually NLP, future pacing, where you can imagine taking the energy that you've collected, this positive energy, and sending it out into your future. Because your future, actually, if you see a positive future out there and all of this wonderful stuff happening, it makes what's happening now much more meaningful. And it's kind of an abstract idea. Phillip kind of talked to me about this, and I understood. Your present is created by your future. It's kind of like there's also, you could say there's a timeline. So what you're experiencing now is related to where you see yourself going, whether it's a positive thing like, gee, I can't wait. I just can't wait to get up in the morning because life is so exciting, or, oh God, things are just, it's getting worse every day. Your present isn't very pleasant if the future is getting worse every day, right? So like that, amping up your positive future affects everything that's happening in your life right now. And so, yeah, if you're tapping in good feelings, that's great. Yes.
Highly recommended. I just want to make one possible clarification. Sometimes people wonder with EFT, they say, well, if you're saying, even though I have this anxiety about going back to work, I can love and accept myself, isn't that reinforcing the negative? Some people wonder about that. And the reason why it's not, it's cleaning out or clearing out a block. And then
it's bringing it up so that you can clear it.
The analogy I use is if your garage is all messed up and dirty, would you put like a fresh coat of paint on it, and put in some new shelves without, cleaning up the ones that are all dirty and broken? You need to get it in clear, clean, ready to go for the new stuff.
Right. Yeah, you want to build on a positive foundation, a solid foundation, always. Yeah.
So the next question, number 10, we're on the last few questions here. Does the effectiveness of EFT depend more on the intention and focus of the client, or the skill and intuition of the EFT practitioner? Or is it teamwork, or the process itself? A very good question. And a lot of the answers are embedded in the question itself. So you could look at that question, and it is part of the intention and focus of the client. It is part of the skill and intuition of the EFT practitioner, and there's an elixir, a combination, a teamwork that results. One thing I would note is that you need a certain willingness by the client, the person receiving the EFT, to want to change. Now, they're sometimes called psychological reversals, PR, sabotaging beliefs, which EFT addresses. So if there's actually a sort of unwillingness or resistance to change, you have to actually address that sabotage. And if deep down the person just isn't ready to change, it really doesn't matter what you do for them, what technique, EFT or anything, because they have to have a certain level of willingness to overcome those obstacles, which may be rather hidden. But they may be quite skeptical about EFT and say, this
still might work. Yeah.
This is weird. This is too strange and possibly work, and that's okay. That doesn't really matter. That you don't want to make that a big issue. I tend to be light about it. We're in California; it's not a big deal. Just we found it is effective. Just kind of tap along or whatever. We make it kind of light of it. So, Jane, did you have anything else to add on that?
No, I think, well, there was the last part, the process itself. I think that the processes you use are important. So the person mentioned 4 things there, and I think all of them are relevant and important.
Okay, Good. So we're on to the next question, number 11. I've often wondered how much the development of EFT over the past years has influenced your own use and the teaching of EFT.
I think, well, we've been influenced by everything we've learned. And if you've been listening since the beginning, it's been many, many years. And it includes approaches we've learned from other EFT experts. And as we also suggested, we've been influenced by what we haven't seen in the work of some other EFT experts, the missing pieces that make big differences in people's lives. So we've been positively influenced, and also I guess we've been maybe challenged to say, well, gee, this actually is not looking as effective as I'd like it to be. How might we make it better? So we always have those kinds of things in mind. And as Philip mentioned, we've been recognized since we started as pioneers. And I think our approach really is uniquely spiritual. There are obviously other people who are spiritual who use EFT, but that is one of the things about our approach that's a little different and takes us in a somewhat different direction. If you really get to the essence of our work, it's about opening the heart and accessing the truth for people to access their own power and truth. Because we want to empower people to be able to make positive changes for themselves. We're not trying to create people who want to rely on someone else for their own truth. And right. It's so important to connect people with who they really are and to help them to move forward on their own journeys. Philip mentioned tapping scripts, which are very common. And as he suggested, I think there is a place for them in certain environments, and if people are using them, I assume they're finding them very effective. It's not our way. We have a lot of enhancements, but our approach is pretty straightforward. What we found in 1998 when we started is tapping works really well. And we don't want to start putting baggage on it that makes people think it has to be more difficult than it really is. If you go back to Roger Callahan, who taught Gary Craig TFT, thought field therapy, with TFT, there was there weren't any affirmations or anything like that. You identify what's happening and you tap, and that's it. And so we're closer to that, although we use some words because there is some power in words. And we're very focused on the words that we use, and also imagery, which is not drawn so much from what we've learned from other EFT people as what we learned in other areas, like in hypnotherapy, for instance, where if you look at images as being, it's like an image is a hologram. It's a picture of reality. And when a person is experiencing something that's blocking them, the images that come to mind reflect that. So they're reflecting, it's that paradigm. And when you clear with EFT, and usually just with very simple tapping, and you go back to the image, it changes completely. Or through different rounds, if you're doing several rounds, it will gradually shift into something that's completely different, that has a special meaning for the client. And it's just so exciting. So those are the kinds of things we really focus on, the things that clients, that clients find to be really transformational and insightful, that bring new awareness and new inspiration to them, and making it as fast and as easy as possible. I think we were talking about this earlier, and Philip mentioned continuous tapping. Steve Wells, an Australian, I think he's a psychologist, isn't he? He's, I think, a licensed person who uses EFT.
He's a coach. He's a coach. Coach.
And he uses continuous tapping. He'll just have people talk and tap through the points, and that can be very effective. So there are a lot of things you can do, and we do a number of different things, but we keep it simple, usually pretty simple.
We have incorporate some of the Steve Wells continuous tapping in our EFT level 1 course. There's an interview and a description of how to do that too.
Yeah.
So are we ready for question 12 here, Jane?
Yeah. Are there any required continuing education courses you must take or belong to an organization to keep the certification? I think sometimes there are certifications that are related to belonging to organizations, and I think that this is what this is in reference to, where you pay a fee every year to be a member of the organization, and they certify you as being a member of their organization, which may or may not have value depending on just what you want. We belong, like I mentioned, to a professional organization, and we pay them every year for our membership. They don't certify us really as anything. We already have our certification. The certifications that we provide are for people for completing courses. Like we certify a person, the EFT level 1, that they've completed this professional training, and we can validate that they've completed it. So with that in mind, we don't require continuing education, but as we've also mentioned, it's a lifelong journey, which is the great thing about it. I can't imagine anything that would be more interesting. We talk about these things every day. Philip and I, we're really lucky to have each other. And there's always more to explore. And so we highly recommend continuing education for everybody. We recommend lifelong learning, keeping yourself growing and, finding the next thing that makes you feel alive and excited about what's happening in your life. So, we recommend continuing education, but it's not part of what our training is about.
Actually, this question came up again recently. One woman was rather disappointed. She took a certification with another organization and found out afterwards, and it was a costly certification, like as we said, if you have to go travel somewhere and go to a hotel and so forth for a weekend, and even there's costs of giving live training too that make them more expensive too. So after doing all that and completing it, she found out afterwards, a little bit down the road, that in order to keep her certification, she had to do certain continuing education courses as part of this organization, of course, and belong as a membership. And it wasn't an option, it was a requirement to keep her certification good. So she was rather upset by that. And as Jane said, we recommend training, but do the training that you want to do, not something you have to do as you're into this sort of almost contractual binding situation.
Yeah, I would want to say something about that also, just without, we always want people to explore what seems to make sense to them. I also would say that some training organizations will try to scare people into thinking that theirs is the only way. If you don't do it through us, it's not really valid, and it's not this, and it's not that. And to me, that's not what it's about. It's really about helping people to further their purpose and live the lives that they want and really make a difference in other people's lives. I think also another thing about what we've done with our work is, I had a vision of it in the 1990s, like if we can train people and to really open to what's in their hearts and the love and the joy and living fully, and then they share it and other people share it, it's an exponential benefit to the whole planet, everyone. And I think that we would say we have a mission and our mission really is to create a more creative and loving world where everybody's unique gifts are honored and nurtured.
Right.
So we have our larger purpose. That's our larger purpose. And different organizations have different purposes. And some of them can be kind of political, which we're not. We're not at all political.
Okay. Anyway, to the final question to conclude here, how do I get started? If you want to start with EFT training, and some people already have training and want to get further training, as we've described, well, we have it described here for further training. You go to there's a website, our website, gettingthrough.org/holistic/EFT courses. The EFT training course certification. It's long. There's a shortened URL, tinyurl.com, EFT certify. And that's where the level 1 certification starts. And that takes about 4 to 12 weeks. Once you actually do it, you have 2 years to do it. But it's a matter of going at your own pace. As we said, there's books, videos, and audios. You can take an online-only version where it's all there immediately online, or if you want to also get hard copy materials, you can order those too. You can add mentoring to it. I think you'll find it's a very practical, easy to follow training. You read the book, listen to the audios, watch the video trainings, and practice. Log hours very simply, take an open book test, write a few short essays about how the course that helped you. Send it in to us. You'll get a one-on-one consultation, which is valuable in itself, and you'll get a very nice certificate too that's attractive to display if you choose. And there's further courses in EFT training and spiritual counseling and holistic coaching. We have quite a few other things if you want to go further. Jane, did you want to add anything else?
Weren't we going to have a special on taking the EFT course with mentoring?
Yes, there'll be a special at this time with mentoring too. So look for that when there'll be a link for the special too, depending on the time that you go there.
Right. And we highly recommend the mentoring. When we were studying, we did a lot of personal mentoring with our instructors, and it really did save us a lot of time. Because there are some things you have those questions like, well, I'm not quite sure about this, and there are sometimes very powerful solutions to those questions, which you might discover, over weeks or months or years, or you could ask somebody who actually has encountered almost everything, probably, or quite a few different things at least, over a period of decades, which we have, and we love to share. Also, Philip, we offer, if someone wants to have a strategy session, if they're not sure exactly what's right for them, we're also open to doing that.
Right. If you go to our website, you can click for a strategy session too, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Free client session too.
Yeah. Yeah, because we want to help people to get off in the right direction. So.
Right. Good.
Part of it.
Well, that just about concludes us here. And for the EFT training and certification questions.